let's talk about King of Shadows by Susan Cooper. A Susan Cooper fan on this channel, or at least of one series. The only stuff I've read by her beforehand, her biggest series, The Darkers Rising from the 60s and 70s. Highly recommend that. It's middle grade, but with lots of stuff that actually can appeal up to adult level. Kind of think things like Narnia. Here, King of Shadows is again middle grade, maybe slightly older middle grade, touching YA. It's right on the cusp because the protagonist is 12 or something, and there are hints of maturer themes at points, but mostly it'd be fine for a 10-year-old basically. It is about a boy who is an actor in our day, an American boy, and he goes to the recently opened Globe, and the book was written 99 or so, I think it was 99, and shortlisted for the Carnegie. And he goes and he's going with this company, which is going to stage things. It's a boy company, and it's going to stage things. I think there are some adults involved, but it's going to stage things like they did back in Shakespeare's day. So boys as women, that kind of thing. And so he goes, and that's fun. And we meet him and the company and so on, and then he falls into a fever and wakes up in 1599, so 400 years beforehand, and it turns out it's the actual opening of the original Globe, and they're producing A Midsummer Night's Dream. And yeah, that's basically the idea. Is he turns out to be a boy they're expecting. He's part of the company. He's been lent by St Paul's School to the Lord Chamberlain's Men, Shakespeare's company, and he's going to be their puck. He's puck in both. And that's the gimmick, anyway. And he's called Nat or Nathan Field. And it's kind of about a lot of things. As in there are a few things going on. I say this, that's positive. There are a few themes to do with fatherhood and grief. To do with the fact that Nat's father has died. His mother died when he was young. His dad died a few years before. And Shakespeare obviously has lost Hamnet, his son. There's stuff about drama. There's stuff about history. There's plenty of characters. This is fun, but a good step beneath The Dark is Rising. If we want the direct comparison, it is decent, basically. It is nicely written. She's a good, solid writer. The research is interesting. The kind of world is interesting. Her depiction of 16th century life is really interesting. I'll give a caveat in a moment. But it's nice. It's rich. You learn lots about stuff, and it feels atmospherically, interesting. And thinking about the drama is fun as well. That's a positive experience. What is basically, those are the strengths. And Nat himself is a perfectly amiable narrator. I liked reading his voice well enough. And there are a few interesting things to do with what's happening in our day, 1999, so 25 years ago, but the present as he is in the past. So you do have this kind of time travel back and forth, basically. That's not the right term. We do have the effects of what's going on. We see what's happening back and forth. I would say the characters generally are broadly forgettable outside of the kind of quite powerful imageries given of some of the characters in Shakespeare's day. Vivid characterization of people like Burbage and Kemp, and Shakespeare himself particularly, who's one of the main characters, really the second main character functioning after Nat, the main supporting character. And some of the other kids, basically it's all strongly depicted enough. And there's some, but I wouldn't say the characters are that strong. What I mean is they're okay. There's a couple of vivid depictions, but in the present particularly, the characters are largely forgettable. I don't remember the names. In the past, they're slightly more interesting. And I think the historical depiction is interesting, as it's nicely put together. The one caveat is that basically it's a bit strange because she doesn't, it's like, man, back in the past, most things were awful. Shakespeare's alive, that's good, but most things are just dreadful. Why are they so dreadful? I wouldn't want to live here. And there's a kind of degree of, maybe you get used to these things. Maybe there are kind of side effects to these things that aren't wholly negative. That's fine. But that's sort of it. Basically, it's a kind of almost horrible histories-esque look at the past. Wasn't it weird and disgusting depiction, which I think is a way of putting you out of sympathy with, not because you have to approve of things that happened in the past or like their hygiene or anything. There are a few canards like over hygiene, but you don't have to believe all these. You don't have to believe all these things are good, but there has to be some sort of actual passion and interest, and here it's just in Shakespeare, basically. And as I said, Burbage is a compelling character, as is a brief depiction of Queen Elizabeth I. But yes, I read it and I think, like this is perhaps just a bit too divorced from its history, despite the technical detail being good. But yeah, there's a couple of small criticisms there. And possibly the last thing is there are a couple of really intriguing fantasy setup bits, like things that made me think of The Dark is Rising in terms of the quality of imagination and vibe. They're really strong, and those are good bits, but maybe it's partly because it's only one book, so you don't get any development over a cycle. But then within The Dark is Rising, particularly the first two books are completely standalone and both work and succeed entirely very well on their own. So it's not just that. I think it is that there is not very much focus or concentration on the intriguing fantasy elements that she's playing with around the time travel. It's, you know, the kind of thing you'd almost have a sequel of, and I don't think there was a sequel or anything. But yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. If you've read it, I'd love to hear what you think, and what time travel stories do you like? Till next time.